I was 27 years old when I met Sophia during my junior year of college in Boston. We clicked instantly over our shared love of hiking and indie films. For 3 years, we built what I thought was the perfect relationship except for one thing. She wanted to wait until marriage, and I respected that. But eventually, the physical distance became too much, and I ended things. 6 months later, she texted me wanting to reconcile. The bombshell. She had been intimate with someone else during our time apart. Let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button as I share how I handled this unexpected twist. I still remember the exact moment I first saw Sophia. It was at my roommate Justin's birthday party in our cramped apartment just off campus. I was leaning against the kitchen counter nursing a beer and contemplating an early escape when she walked in. She had these warm brown eyes that crinkled when she smiled, and long dark hair that fell in natural waves. Unlike most people at the party who were already several drinks in, she carried a book in her hand, using it almost like a shield in the crowded space. "Is that Vonnegut?" I asked, noticing the worn paperback. She looked surprised, then pleased. "Yeah, Slaughterhouse-Five. Have you read it?" That simple question launched a 2-hour conversation in the corner of the kitchen while the party raged around us. We discovered we both loved hiking the New England trails, had the same taste in obscure indie bands, and could quote entire scenes from Wes Anderson films. By the time the party wound down, I had her number and a promise to meet for coffee the next day. Before Sophia, my dating history was a series of brief, forgettable relationships. Nothing lasted more than a few months, usually ending when the initial excitement faded, and we realized we had little in common beyond physical attraction. I had started to wonder if maybe I just was not built for long-term commitment. But Sophia was different. She was in her second year of pre-med, brilliant and driven in a way that was intimidating and attractive at the same time. Where I was impulsive, she was thoughtful. When I got stressed about finals, she was the one with color-coded study schedules and perfectly organized notes. We balanced each other perfectly. Our first date was at a tiny coffee shop where we stayed until closing time. Our second was a documentary film festival, where we whispered commentary to each other until the people behind us shushed us. By our fifth date, I was already telling my friends this could be something serious. The first few months were a whirlwind of getting to know each other. I introduced her to my parents when they visited for Parents' Weekend, and she took me home for Thanksgiving to meet her family in Connecticut. Her parents were warm but traditional, and I could see where Sophia got her studious nature. We went on a road trip to Vermont during winter break, spending days hiking through snowy forests and evenings cuddled by the fireplace in our rented cabin. It was after we had been dating for about 6 months that Sophia told me about her decision to wait until marriage. We were sitting on my bed watching a movie when things started to get heated. When I reached for the button on her jeans, she gently took my hand and pulled away. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice serious. "I made a promise to myself a long time ago that I would wait until marriage. It is important to me." I will admit I was surprised. We had been taking things slow physically, but I had assumed that was just her being cautious as we built our relationship. I had not expected a complete boundary around sex. "Is this a religious thing?" I asked, trying to understand. "Partly," she said. "My family is Catholic, but this is more of a personal choice. It is something I decided for myself, not just because of my upbringing." That night we had a long conversation about what this meant for our relationship. She explained her boundaries, what she was comfortable with, and what was off limits. I told her I respected her choice, and I meant it. I had fallen hard for Sophia, and if waiting was part of being with her, then I would wait. The emotional connection we shared felt strong enough that I believed physical intimacy could wait. The first year of our relationship was full of those magic moments that make you believe you have found your person. We studied together in the library until closing time, took weekend trips to nearby cities, and spent lazy Sundays making pancakes and watching old movies. We met each other's friends, who quickly became our friends. We had inside jokes and favorite restaurants and dreams about the future that increasingly included each other. But I would be lying if I said there were not moments of frustration. Physical intimacy was limited to kissing and some touching, always stopping before things went too far. Sometimes when we would lie together on the couch or in bed, I would feel a palpable tension between us, a physical desire that had nowhere to go. In those moments, I would remind myself that what we had was worth the wait. After graduation, things changed. I got a job as a software engineer at a tech company in Boston while Sophia started medical school at Tufts. We decided to move in together partly to save money in the expensive Boston rental market, and partly because we wanted to build a life together. We found a small one-bedroom apartment in Somerville, walking distance to a subway station, and with a tiny balcony where we grew herbs and tomatoes in the summer. Moving in together felt like a big step forward in our relationship. In many ways, we were acting like a married couple already sharing responsibilities, making joint decisions, planning for the future. It seemed natural that our physical relationship might progress as well, but Sophia remained firm in her boundaries. Looking back, I can pinpoint this as when the first serious cracks began to appear. What had seemed manageable when we were still in college, with separate living spaces and busy schedules, became more difficult when we were sharing a bed every night, but not fully connecting in the way I desired. Let me know in the comments if you have ever been in a relationship where you and your partner had different expectations about physical intimacy. Like and subscribe to hear how our story unfolds. As our second year of living together began, the conversations about physical intimacy became more frequent and more tense. What had started as occasional frustration was growing into a persistent source of conflict between us. One evening, after a particularly romantic dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, we returned home and started kissing in the hallway. As things intensified, I guided her toward the bedroom, and once again she pulled away. "Parker, you know my boundaries," she said softly, but firmly. I know, I sighed, running my hand through my hair. "But we have been together for almost 3 years now. We live together. We are talking about our future. Sometimes it feels like we are already married in every way except legally. A piece of paper does not make a marriage," she countered. "The commitment is what matters. And I made a commitment to myself that I intend to keep." These conversations started happening more frequently, always ending the same way. Sophia would stand her ground, and I would eventually concede, trying to be the understanding boyfriend. But each time I felt a little more frustrated, a little more rejected. "Have you ever considered that this is something we could work through together?" I asked during one of these discussions. "That maybe we could find a middle ground." "This is not about finding a middle ground, Parker," she said, her voice tinged with disappointment. "This is about respecting my choice. There is no compromise on this." I knew she was right, but it did not make it any easier. The physical distance was creating an emotional one as well. We started arguing about other things, two small, insignificant things that would not have bothered us before. She was stressed with the demanding schedule of medical school, and I was putting in long hours at work trying to impress my new managers. We were both tired and irritable, and the underlying tension about our physical relationship only exacerbated everything else. I started confiding in my friend Alex, who had been with his girlfriend since high school. "Man, 3 years is a long time," he said when I explained the situation. "Have you thought about couples therapy? Maybe having a neutral third party could help you both communicate better about this." I brought up the idea to Sophia, who was hesitant but eventually agreed. We found a therapist who specialized in relationship issues, and for a few sessions it seemed like we were making progress. We were communicating more openly about our feelings and expectations, but ultimately the core issue remained unresolved. Sophia's position was unwavering, and my frustration continued to build. One night, after a particularly grueling day at work, I came home to find Sophia studying at the kitchen table, surrounded by medical textbooks and empty coffee cups. I leaned down to kiss her, and she absent-mindedly turned her cheek toward me, her eyes never leaving her notes. "Do you ever think about how much this is affecting us?" I asked, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. She looked up, finally, giving me her full attention. What do you mean, this wall between us? The fact that I feel like I am constantly being rejected by the person I love most. Parker, me wanting to wait is not a rejection of you, she said, her voice tired. It is a choice I made for myself long before I met you. But it affects me too, I insisted. We are supposed to be partners, but this huge part of our relationship is completely one-sided. You get to make all the decisions about our physical intimacy, and I just have to accept it. Are you saying you do not accept it anymore? She asked quietly. The question hung in the air between us. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider what it would mean to say no, to admit that maybe this was a deal-breaker for me. I do not know, I answered honestly. I love you, Sophia, but I am starting to wonder if love is enough. That night, we slept with our backs to each other, a physical manifestation of the distance growing between us. The next morning, instead of our usual routine of having breakfast together, Sophia left early for the library, leaving a note saying she needed space to think. I spent the day in a fog, unable to concentrate on work, my mind continuously circling back to our relationship. Was I being unreasonable? Was it fair to end a relationship over this one issue when everything else between us was so good, but was it really so good anymore? The tension about physical intimacy had seeped into every aspect of our relationship. When Sophia came home that evening, we sat down on opposite ends of the couch, both of us clearly preparing for a difficult conversation. I have been thinking about what you said, she began. And I want you to know that I understand this is hard for you. But my decision to wait is not something I can compromise on. It is too important to me. I understand that, I said, and I have been trying to respect it for 3 years. But I am not sure I can keep doing this indefinitely. The physical distance is creating an emotional one, and I miss feeling close to you. We are close, she insisted. Sex is not the only way to be intimate, but it is an important one, I countered. At least it is to me. We talked in circles for hours, neither of us willing to budge from our positions. As the night wore on, it became increasingly clear that we had reached an impasse. There was no solution that would satisfy both of us, no compromise that would not require one of us to sacrifice something fundamental. Finally, exhausted and emotionally drained, I said the words I had been avoiding. Maybe we need to consider that we might not be right for each other despite how much we love each other. The look of pain on Sophia's face nearly broke me. Tears welled in her eyes as she asked, "Are you breaking up with me?" "I do not know," I admitted. "But I think we need to seriously consider if this relationship is sustainable when we want such different things." We agreed to take a few days to think about it separately. I crashed on Alex's couch, giving Sophia space in our apartment. Those days were some of the most confusing of my life. I alternated between certainty that we needed to end things and desperate hope that we could somehow work it out. I missed her terribly, but every time I considered going back, I would remember the cycle of frustration and rejection that had become our pattern. After 3 days, I went back to the apartment. Sophia was sitting on the couch, looking as though she had not slept. I sat beside her, and we both knew what was coming. "I love you." I began, my voice breaking. "But I do not think this is working anymore." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. Sophia's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks as she reached for my hand. "Please do not do this," she whispered. "We can work through this. We can find a way." "We have been trying to find a way for 3 years," I said gently, "and we are just going in circles. You cannot compromise on your values, and I cannot keep pretending that this is not affecting me." "So you are throwing away everything we have built together over this one thing?" she asked, her voice rising with emotion. The accusation stung, but I knew we had reached a point where staying together would only lead to more hurt for both of us. "It is not just one thing anymore," I explained. "It has become the thing that affects everything else. We are arguing more, connecting less. I feel constantly rejected and you feel constantly pressured. That is not healthy for either of us. We talked for hours that night, crying and holding each other, reminiscing about the good times and mourning the future we had planned together. By morning, we had reached a painful agreement I would move out within the week, and we would try to end things as amicably as possible. The logistics of untangling our lives were almost as painful as the breakup itself. We had accumulated 3 years' worth of shared possessions, memories, and routines. Friends were shocked when they heard the news, many of them assuming we were headed for marriage rather than separation. Some tried to convince us to reconsider, not understanding the depth of the issue that had driven us apart. I found a small studio apartment across town and threw myself into setting it up as if creating a new space could somehow fill the void Sophia had left. The first few weeks were a blur of work, unpacking, and avoiding social media, where photos of our life together still populated my feeds. The guilt was overwhelming at times. I questioned my decision, constantly wondering if I had been selfish or unreasonable. Sophia had been clear about her boundaries from the beginning, and I had agreed to them. Was it fair to change the rules halfway through? But another part of me knew that I had been honest about my growing struggles, and staying in a relationship where both of us were unhappy would have been worse in the long run. To cope with the emptiness, I developed new routines. I joined a gym and started working out regularly, using physical exhaustion to quiet my restless mind. I reconnected with old friends I had somewhat neglected during my relationship with Sophia. I even tried my hand at cooking something Sophia had always taken the lead on in our relationship. About 2 months after the breakup, I reluctantly agreed to a blind date set up by a coworker. Jessica was smart and attractive, a graphic designer with a quick wit and easy laugh. Under different circumstances, I might have been interested, but I found myself comparing her to Sophia throughout the evening. We went on 2 more dates before I admitted to myself that I was not ready to be with someone new. There were moments when I came close to texting Sophia, late at night after a few drinks with friends, or when I passed by our favorite coffee shop or the movie theater where we used to spend Sunday afternoons. Each time I would type out a message, stare at it for a few minutes, and then delete it. What would be the point? Nothing had changed. We still wanted fundamentally different things. Around the 4-month mark, I ran into Sophia's roommate from college, Tara, at a farmer's market. She greeted me with an awkward hug, and we made small talk about work and mutual friends. "How is she?" I finally asked, unable to help myself. Tara hesitated. "She is okay. It was really hard at first. She threw herself into school, even more than usual, if you can believe that. But I think she is starting to come out of it. We went to a party last weekend, and she actually stayed for more than an hour." The news was both a relief and strangely painful. I wanted Sophia to be happy, but there was a selfish part of me that wanted her to miss me as much as I missed her. It was a confusing mess of emotions that I was still trying to sort through. 6 months after our breakup, I had settled into a new normal. The sharp pain of losing Sophia had dulled to an occasional ache. I had been promoted at work, started taking a coding class to expand my skills, and even gone on a few dates that did not end with me making mental comparisons to my ex. I was healing slowly but surely. Then came the text that would upend everything again. It was a Tuesday evening in October. I was sitting on my couch, laptop open, as I worked through a problem for my coding class. My phone buzzed with a notification, and Sophia's name appeared on the screen for the first time in half a year. "Hi, Parker. I know it has been a while, but I have been thinking about us a lot lately. Would you be open to meeting for coffee sometime? There are things I would like to talk about." I stared at the message for a long time, my heart racing. What could she want to talk about after all this time? Had she met someone new and wanted to give me the courtesy of hearing it from her? Or was it possible that she was reconsidering her stance on the very issue that had torn us apart after? "Several drafts," I replied. "That would be okay. When were you thinking?" We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a cafe neither of us had frequented during our relationship. I spent the days leading up to our meeting analyzing every possible scenario. rehearsing what I would say, how I would react. By the time Saturday arrived, I was a bundle of nerves. I arrived early, claiming a table in the corner, and ordering a black coffee that I was too anxious to drink. When she walked in, it felt like all the air left the room. She looked the same but different somehow. Her hair shorter, her smile tentative as she spotted me and made her way over. "Hi," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Hi," I echoed, suddenly at a loss for words despite all my preparation. We engaged in awkward small talk as she got her tea, catching up on the surface details of our lives. She was doing well in medical school, had presented at a conference the previous month. I told her about my promotion and the coding class. It felt surreal to be sitting across from the person who had once known every detail of my life, exchanging information like casual acquaintances. Finally, after about 20 minutes of this, Sophia took a deep breath and said, "I did not ask you here just to catch up, Parker. I have been doing a lot of thinking over these past months, and I realized something important." My heart hammered in my chest as I waited for her to continue. "I miss you," she said simply. "More than I thought possible. And I have been wondering if we gave up too easily, if there might still be a chance for us." The words I had both hoped for and dreaded hung between us. I stayed silent, sensing there was more she wanted to say. "These months apart have given me time to reflect on my choices and values," she continued. "And I have come to realize that while my decision to wait was important to me, so are you. So is what we had together." Hope bloomed in my chest, cautious but undeniable. Was she saying what I thought she was saying? "Sophia, are you saying you have changed your mind about waiting?" I asked carefully. She looked down at her tea, then back up at me, her eyes meeting mine directly. "In a way, yes. But there is something else you should know." She paused, visibly gathering her courage before continuing. "During our time apart, I met someone. It was brief, just a few weeks. But we were intimate." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat back in my chair, trying to process what she was telling me. Sophia, who had been so firm in her conviction about waiting for marriage that she had let me walk away, had been with someone else just months after our breakup. What I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know how this must sound," she said quickly. "And I know I owe you an explanation. After we broke up, I was devastated. I questioned everything, including the values that had cost me our relationship. When I met David at a study group, I was vulnerable and confused. It happened once, and afterward I felt terrible, not just because I had compromised my values, but because it made me realize how much I still loved you. I felt like I was drowning, unable to reconcile the Sophia I had known with the story she was telling me. The woman who had stood firm for 3 years, who had let me walk away rather than compromise, had given that part of herself to someone she had known for weeks. "So let me get this straight," I said, anger rising to replace the initial shock. "For 3 years I respected your boundaries. I never pushed you beyond what you were comfortable with, even when it was difficult. I walked away when it became clear neither of us could compromise. And now you are telling me that in the space of a few months you did with a virtual stranger what you would not do with me." After years together, Sophia's eyes welled with tears as she reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back, not ready for her touch. "It was not like that, Parker," she said, her voice breaking. "What happened with David was a mistake, a moment of weakness during the lowest point of my life. It made me realize what I had lost with you. And now what I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. You want us to get back together because you have conveniently changed your mind about waiting. That is not fair," she said, wiping at her eyes. "I am trying to be honest with you. I did not have to tell you about David at all. Would you have preferred to lie to me?" I shot back. "Of course not. I am just saying that I am telling you this because I want complete honesty between us if there is any chance of starting over." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. Anger, hurt, confusion, and underneath it all a persistent ache of love for the woman sitting across from me. Despite everything, part of me still wanted her. "I need some time to process this," I said, finally standing up from the table. "This is a lot to take in." "Parker, please," Sophia said, her voice desperate. "Can we talk through this? I do not want to lose you again." "You did not lose me, Sophia. You let me go," I said quietly. "And I need to think about what that means now in light of everything you have just told me." I walked out of the cafe, my mind reeling. The crisp October air did little to clear my thoughts as I wandered aimlessly through the city streets, replaying Sophia's revelation over and over. By the time I returned to my apartment, I was emotionally exhausted, but no closer to knowing how I felt about her confession. Over the next few days, I cycled through every possible emotion. There were moments when I was furious, feeling like the last 3 years of our relationship had been built on a lie. If Sophia could so easily discard her convictions after we broke up, had they ever been as important as she claimed? Had I sacrificed our relationship for a principle that meant nothing? Other times I felt a deep sadness imagining Sophia in another man's arms, sharing something with him that she had refused to share with me. The images tortured me, appearing unbidden in my mind at random moments throughout the day. Then there were moments of clarity when I tried to look at the situation objectively. Sophia and I had been broken up. She was free to make her own choices just as I had been. We had no claim on each other anymore. And was it not somewhat hypocritical of me to be upset about her being with someone else when I had also gone on dates during our time apart? After a week of internal struggle, I texted Sophia asking if we could meet again. We arranged to meet at a park this time, somewhere we could talk privately, but still in a neutral public space. She was sitting on a bench when I arrived, bundled in a burgundy coat against the autumn chill, her hair blowing slightly in the breeze. The sight of her still made my heart skip despite everything. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down beside her, leaving a careful distance between us. "I have been thinking a lot about what you told me," I began. "And I have a lot of questions." "I will answer anything, honestly," she promised. "Was it just the once with David?" I asked, needing to understand the full picture. She nodded. "Just once. Afterward, I knew immediately it was a mistake." "And what happened with him? Are you still in contact?" "No," she said, firmly. "I ended things right after." He was understanding. He knew I was still processing our breakup. I took a deep breath before asking the question that had been haunting me most. "If your values were so important to you that you let me walk away, how could you compromise them so easily with someone you barely knew?" Sophia was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "It was not easy, and it was not because David meant more to me than you did. It was the opposite. Losing you made me question everything I thought I knew about myself and what I wanted. I was trying to prove to myself that I could move on, that I had made the right choice in letting you go. But all it did was show me how wrong I was." Her explanation made a certain kind of sense, but it still hurt to hear. "So what now?" I asked. "You have decided that waiting is not important to you anymore." "It is more complicated than that," she said. "I still believe in the value of commitment, but I also believe that there are different ways to honor that commitment. What I realized is that by holding so rigidly to this one principle, I was sacrificing something just as valuable, our relationship and the future we could have together." We talked for hours that afternoon, picking apart the past and cautiously exploring the possibility of a future. Sophia explained how her thinking had evolved during our time apart, how losing me had forced her to re-examine her values and recognize that some were more important than others. I shared my own journey, the pain of our separation, and the slow process of healing. By the time the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, we had reached a fragile understanding. The hurt was still there, the trust damaged, but not beyond repair. We agreed to take things slowly, to start with occasional dates, and see if we could rebuild what we had lost. Over the next few weeks, we cautiously relearned each other. In some ways, it was like starting a new relationship. We were both different people now, shaped by the experience of losing each other and living separately. But there was also a familiar comfort in being together, a recognition of the connection that had never fully disappeared. The physical aspect of our relationship was new territory. We moved slowly, both of us carrying the weight of our past and the knowledge of what had happened during our separation. But there was also a freedom in starting fresh, in building a physical relationship based on mutual desire rather than restriction. 2 months into our reconciliation, we had a conversation that finally put the past to rest. We were sitting on my couch after having dinner together, a documentary playing in the background that neither of us was really watching. "I need you to know something," I said, turning to face her fully. "I have forgiven you for what happened with David. Not because it did not hurt, but because I understand now that we were both trying to find our way forward without each other. We both made choices, some better than others, but they led us back here to each other." Tears filled Sophia's eyes as she leaned forward to kiss me. "Thank you," she whispered against my lips. "I was so afraid I had lost you forever." "You almost did," I admitted. "But sometimes you have to lose something to understand its true value." That night marked a turning point in our new relationship. We stopped dwelling on the past and started building our future. A year later, we moved in together again, this time with a clearer understanding of each other's needs and values. 2 years after our reconciliation, I proposed during a hike on the same trail where we had first said "I love you." Looking back now, I can see that our breakup, painful as it was necessary for both of us. Sophia needed to examine her values outside the context of our relationship to understand which were truly hers and which were expectations she had internalized. I needed to recognize that physical intimacy was important to me, not just as a physical release, but as an expression of love and connection. We both learned that relationships require compromise, but not at the expense of your core values. The trick is figuring out which values are truly core and which are negotiable. It is a lesson we continue to learn every day as we build our life together. For anyone facing a similar crossroads in their relationship, I would say this: sometimes letting go is the only way to find your way back to each other. And sometimes the person who returns to you is even better than the one you lost because they have grown through the pain of losing you. Has anyone else gone through a breakup and reconciliation that made your relationship stronger? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found value in my story, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the most difficult paths lead to the most beautiful destinations.